Chosen one, stop everything you're doing right now. I'm not saying that lightly, and I'm not saying it to be dramatic. I'm saying it because something brought you here. Something nudged your thumb to pause, your eyes to lock in, your mind to quiet just enough to hear this. Out of everything flooding your feed today, all the noise, all the opinions, all the distractions competing for your attention, this moment right here is not random. It never is. You weren't meant to scroll past this. You weren't meant to save it for later. You were meant to hear this now while the door is open and the signal is clear. You've been consuming content all day, maybe all week, maybe all your life. Advice, entertainment, drama, motivation that fades by morning. But deep down, you know most of it never really lands. It stimulates you, but it doesn't transform you. It fills time, but it doesn't fill the space you feel inside when everything goes quiet. This is different, not because of the words themselves, but because of the timing. Timing is everything, and right now you are standing at a crossroads you can't see yet, but you can feel it. That restlessness in your chest, that sense that something is about to shift, that impatience with the old versions of yourself, that's not confusion, that's preparation. You've been through things most people would never understand, and even fewer would survive without breaking completely. You didn't just face obstacles, you faced moments where you questioned your own worth, your own sanity, your own strength. There were nights you replayed conversations in your head, mornings you woke up already tired, days where you smiled for others while silently bleeding inside, and still you kept going. Not because it was easy, but because something inside you refused to quit. That something is the reason you're here right now. You may not call yourself chosen out loud. Maybe you don't even like the word. Maybe it feels heavy, arrogant, or unrealistic. But being chosen isn't about being better than others. It's about being willing to be shaped by pressure, refined by silence, and trained by isolation. Look at your life closely. Notice how often you were pulled away from crowds. Notice how you outgrew people, habits, even dreams that once felt like home. Notice how you were forced to sit alone with your thoughts while others escaped into noise. That wasn't punishment. That was training. There were seasons where nothing made sense. Doors closed without explanation, people left without warning, plans collapsed right when you thought you were finally getting somewhere, and every time you asked the same question in different ways, why me? But what if the real question was always, why not you? What if you were trusted with more pressure because you were built to carry more weight? What if the very things you thought disqualified you were the things that qualified you for what's coming next? You've developed a depth most people don't have because they never had to. You see patterns others miss. You feel energy shift in a room before words change. You sense when something is off, even when everything looks fine on the surface. That's not overthinking, that's discernment. And it was sharpened by every disappointment you survived, every betrayal you didn't become bitter from, every delay that taught you patience when you wanted progress. Right now, your feed is full of people telling you to hustle harder, manifest faster, glow up louder. But none of that matters if you're misaligned. Speed without direction just gets you lost quicker. Noise without truth just leaves you empty. You don't need more information. You need confirmation. You need clarity. You need a reminder of who you are beneath the expectations, beneath the labels, beneath the version of yourself you perform for the world. You've been feeling a pull lately, haven't you? A strange mix of urgency and calm, like something is about to end and begin at the same time. You can't explain it, but you know you're not meant to stay where you are, not mentally, not spiritually, not emotionally. You've learned the lessons of this level. You've mastered survival here, and now the discomfort you feel is not because you're failing. It's because you're outgrowing the environment that once taught you everything it could. Pay attention to what no longer excites you. Pay attention to what drains you faster than it used to. Pay attention to how you crave meaning over attention, peace over applause, alignment over approval. Those are signs you're shifting. And shifts are rarely loud. They start quietly internally, often while the world thinks nothing is happening with you at all. You don't owe anyone the old version of you, not your explanations, not your energy, not your time. You've spent enough of your life shrinking yourself so others could stay comfortable, enough dimming your intuition so you could fit into conversations that never fed your soul, enough doubting your own voice because it didn't match the noise around you. The next phase of your life requires honesty with yourself first. And honesty is uncomfortable when you've been lying to survive. There are things you've tolerated that you were never meant to carry, long-term situations you stayed in out of loyalty, fear, or habit. But loyalty without alignment is self-betrayal. And fear disguised as patience will keep you stuck forever. You already know what needs to change. You've known for a while. You just kept hoping it would change on its own so you wouldn't have to be the one to make the hard decision. This message isn't here to pressure you. It's here to wake you up. Because once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. Once you feel the truth settle in your chest, pretending becomes exhausting. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not broken. You are in transition, and transitions feel chaotic when you don't understand their purpose. Think about how many times you almost gave up, how many times you thought, I can't do this anymore, and then somehow you did. Not because the situation improved overnight, but because you did. Your capacity expanded, your resilience deepened, your standards shifted. And now, the life you once begged for would bore you. That's growth, even if it doesn't look pretty on the outside. There's a reason your mind doesn't shut off easily, a reason you question everything, a reason shallow conversations feel unbearable to you. You're not meant for surface level living. You're meant to go deep, to understand, to build something that lasts longer than trends and opinions. That path is lonelier, slower, and far less celebrated in the beginning, but it produces something real, something solid, something that doesn't collapse the moment pressure hits. Right now, you're being asked to trust what you can't fully see yet, to move without applause, to prepare in private, to become disciplined where you once relied on motivation. Because motivation fades, identity doesn't. When you know who you are, you don't need constant validation to keep going. You move because it's who you are, not because someone is watching. You may feel like you've been hidden, overlooked, underestimated, like others passed you by while you stayed stuck in the background. But what if you weren't being ignored? What if you were being protected? Some things can't be rushed. Some callings require depth before exposure. And some people need to be built in silence so they don't crumble when the spotlight finally finds them. Notice how your tolerance for nonsense has dropped. How you'd rather be alone than misunderstood. How you'd rather be quiet than fake. That's not isolation, it's refinement. You're learning to guard your energy because you finally understand its value. And once you understand that, you stop handing it out to anything that asks. This video, this moment is not here to hype you up for a day. It's here to anchor you, to remind you that what you're feeling is valid, that the discomfort has meaning, that the urge to stop everything and reevaluate your life is not weakness, it's wisdom. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pause, step back, and ask yourself if the life you were living actually matches the person you're becoming. You are closer than you think, not necessarily to a finish line, but to alignment. And alignment changes everything. When your actions match your values, when your environment supports your growth, when your inner voice leads instead of fear, things start to move in ways you don't have to force. Opportunities feel different. People feel different. Even time feels different. But before that happens, there's usually a moment like this. A moment where you're asked to stop scrolling, stop distracting yourself, stop running from the silence, and listen. Really listen. Because deep down, you already know what this is about. You know what you've been avoiding. You know what you've been postponing. You know what chapter is closing. Even if you're not ready to say goodbye to it yet, you don't have to have it all figured out today. You just have to be honest today. Honest about what's no longer working. Honest about what you truly want, not what you were taught to want. Honest about the fact that the old strategies aren't going to take you where your soul is trying to go next. And that honesty will feel like loss at first because you'll be letting go of identities, relationships, and dreams that once kept you safe. But safety and growth rarely live in the same place, and you didn't come this far to stay comfortable. You came this far because something in you is built for more. Even when you're tired of hearing that phrase, more doesn't always mean bigger or louder. Sometimes it means quieter, truer, and more aligned than ever before. So take a breath right now. Let your shoulders drop. Let the urgency settle into clarity. You're not missing out by stopping everything for this moment. You're gaining perspective, and perspective is priceless. As you move forward from here, you'll start to notice subtle shifts, how certain options no longer tempt you, how certain paths feel closed no matter how hard you try force them. How new ideas start to whisper instead of shout. Follow the whisper. It's leading you somewhere that requires patience, courage, and trust in yourself at a level you're still growing into. And as you continue on this path, you'll realize that everything you thought was a delay was actually alignment in progress. Every breakdown was a breakthrough in disguise, and every moment you felt lost was guiding you toward a version of yourself that is more grounded, more focused, and more prepared than ever before, especially as you begin to notice how your reactions change, how your priorities shift, and how the things that once controlled you start to lose their grip while new responsibilities quietly take their place. Responsibilities that feel heavier but also strangely right, as if you've been preparing for them long before you consciously understood what they were asking of you because growth doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives like a quiet weight added to your shoulders, one you somehow know you can carry even before you understand why you have to. You've noticed it already. The way certain conversations feel smaller now, the way you no longer rush to explain yourself, The way silence has stopped feeling empty and started feeling like information. That's not you becoming distant, that's you becoming selective. You're beginning to understand that not everyone is meant to come with you, and that realization hurts more than any obvio us loss ever did, because it forces you to accept that love alone isn't enough to sustain alignment. You can care deeply about someone and still recognize that their presence pulls you backward instead of forward. And the hardest part isn't letting go of them. It's letting go of who you were when you were with them. The version of you that compromised, that overgave, that stayed quiet to keep the peace. You're waking up to how much energy you used to spend trying to be understood by people who were never really listening. How much effort you poured into proving your worth instead of protecting it. And now something in you is done negotiating with your own intuition. You don't argue with it like you used to. When it speaks, you listen. Even if you don't act immediately, you take note, you file it away. You trust that it knows the terrain better than your fear ever did. Fear still shows up, of course. It always does when you're on the edge of something real, but it doesn't run the show anymore. It doesn't get the final vote. You've learned the difference between fear that warns and fear that lies. One protects you, the other keeps you trapped. And lately, you've been choosing movement over paralysis, even when your hands shake while you do it. You've also started noticing how little validation actually feeds you now. Compliments land softer. Applause fades faster. What stays is integrity. What stays is knowing you didn't abandon yourself to be accepted. There's a quiet confi, dense, growing in you. Not the loud kind that needs to be seen, but the steady kind that doesn't panic when things go silent. The kind that knows who it is even when no one is watching. This is the part most people don't talk about, the in-between. The stretch where the old life has lost its grip, but the new one hasn't fully formed yet, where you're not who you were, but you're not quite who you're becoming. It's uncomfortable here, lonely even, because there's nothing to cling to except your own judgment. No script, no guarantee, just a sense that turning back would be more painful than moving forward, even blindly. You've probably caught yourself grieving things that technically haven't ended yet, relationships that still exist but feel different, goals that once fueled you but now feel hollow, dreams you chased because you were supposed to, not because they were true. That grief doesn't mean you failed. It means you're awake enough to notice when something no longer fits, and fitting in has lost its appeal anyway. You've realized how expensive it is. The cost of shrinking your thoughts, censoring your honesty, diluting your standards. You paid that price for a long time, and you're finally done pretending it was worth it. Peace feels better than approval. Clarity feels better than chaos. And you're no longer willing to trade those things just to avoid being misunderstood. There's a reason your path looks different. A reason it's taken longer. A reason you've had to RN things the hard way instead of being handed shortcuts. Depth takes time, wisdom takes experience, and the kind of impact you're being shaped for can't be rushed without breaking something essential inside you. You're starting to see how every delay sharpened you, how every disappointment stripped illusions away, how every setback forced you to rely less on external stability and more on internal grounding. You don't panic the way you used to when plans fall apart. You adjust, you adapt, you observe. Because you've learned that collapse often precedes clarity, you also see through things faster now. Empty promises, performative confidence, people who talk a lot but move very little. You're not impressed by surface level success anymore. You look for substance, consistency, alignment between words and actions. And when it's not there, you don't try to convince yourself otherwise. You simply step back. That discernment is a double-edged sword. It protects you, but it also isolates you. Fewer people can meet you where you are now. Fewer conversations satisfy you. Fewer environments feel nourishing. But what you've gained in exchange is self-respect. And self-respect changes the way you move through the world. You don't chase as much. You don't force connections. You don't beg for clarity. If something is meant for you, it will meet you with effort, not excuses, with honesty, not confusion. And if it doesn't, you let it go faster than you used to, not because you care less, but because you care more about your own well-being. There's a quiet discipline forming in your life, even if you haven't named it yet. You're more intentional with your time, more aware of what drains you, more willing to say no without a long explanation. That's not selfishness, that's stewardship. You're learning how to manage your energy like the valuable resource it is, and that's preparing you for something that requires focus, something that can't be built in fragments, something that demands consistency over intensity. You may not see the full picture yet, but you feel the pull toward structure, toward commitment, toward showing up even when inspiration doesn't. Because inspiration comes and goes. Character stays. You're also realizing that healing isn't linear, that just because you understand something doesn't mean it no longer hurts. That growth doesn't erase sensitivity, it refines it. You still feel deeply. You just don't let feelings dictate your direction anymore. You hold them, learn from them, and then choose consciously instead of reacting automatically. That choice is power. And power feels strange at first when you're used to chaos. Calm can feel boring when you've lived in survival mode for too long. Stability can feel suspicious, but you're learning to sit in it without self-sabotage, to let good things exist without waiting for them to fall apart, to trust that not everything needs to be earned through suffering. You've earned enough already. Third, ease, also a growing sense of responsibility you can't ignore. Not the kind that comes from guilt, but the kind that comes from capacity. You're aware that you see things others don't, that you articulate what others feel but can't name, that your presence alone can steady a room even when you're not trying to lead, and that awareness carries weight. But leadership doesn't always look like being out front. Sometimes it looks like holding your ground, modeling integrity, refusing to participate in cycles that drain everyone involved, choosing patience when the world demands speed, choosing depth when the world rewards surface. You're being shaped into someone who can hold complexity without collapsing, someone who can listen without absorbing everything, someone who can stand in uncertainty without needing immediate resolution. Those skills aren't flashy, they don't trend, but they're rare, and they matter more than you realize right now. You might still have moments where doubt creeps in, where you wonder if you're overthinking, if you should just settle, if this path is worth the discomfort. That's normal. Doubt is part of any real transition. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're stepping beyond what's familiar. And familiarity is seductive. It promises safety, even when it's the very thing keeping you small. You've already tasted what it's like to outgrow your old life. You know you can't go back without betraying yourself. That awareness doesn't let you rest in half-truths anymore. So you keep going, not recklessly, not blindly, but deliberately. One honest decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one moment of courage that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but changes everything on the inside. You're not meant to rush this phase. It's doing important work beneath the surface, building resilience, clarifying values, strengthening your relationship with yourself. When the external shift finally comes, and it will, you'll be able to hold it without losing yourself in it. For now, your job isn't to have all the answers, it's to stay present, to keep listening, to keep choosing alignment over convenience, to trust that the same force that carried you through your hardest seasons is still guiding you, even now, especially now, as you find yourself standing in moments of stillness that feel heavier than chaos ever did. Moments where the next step hasn't revealed itself yet, but the old steps have clearly dissolved, leaving you with nothing to do but breathe, observe, and remain steady as subtle changes continue unfolding around you and within you, changes that don't demand immediate action, but quietly reshape how you see yourself, your future, and the kind of life you are no longer willing to postpone. Postpone, because postponement has been the silent tax you've paid for years without realizing it. You postponed your truth to keep the peace. You postponed your voice to avoid conflict. You postponed your calling because the timing never felt perfect. And now you're beginning to see that perfect timing is a myth people use to stay comfortable. Real timing feels messy. It feels inconvenient. It feels like being asked to move before you feel ready. You spent a long time preparing without knowing exactly what you were preparing for, collecting lessons, developing patience, learning restraint, watching more than you spoke, listening more than you acted. That wasn't wasted time. That was incubation. Some things need darkness to form properly. Some strength only grows when no one is clapping for you. You're starting to trust yourself in a way you never did before. Not blindly, but honestly. You don't gaslight your own feelings anymore. When something feels off, you acknowledge it. When something feels right, you lean into it without needing permission. That self-trust didn't come from confidence courses or motivational quotes. It came from surviving moments you didn't think you would, from being there for yourself when others weren't, from keeping promises to yourself after breaking them enough times to know how painful that was. There's a calm forming beneath your thoughts, a steadiness that doesn't depend on outcomes. You still want things, you still care deeply, but you're no longer attached to forcing results. You've learned that forcing creates resistance, while alignment creates momentum, and momentum feels lighter even when the work is heavy. You've also become more honest about your limit. You don't try to be everything to everyone anymore. You recognize when you're tired and you rest without guilt. You recognize when you need space and you take it without apology. That's not weakness. That's maturity. And it's a sign you're no longer living to prove anything. You've noticed how your inner dialogue has changed. It's quieter now. less harsh, less reactive. You still challenge yourself, but you don't attack yourself. You've stopped using shame as a motivator. You've learned that growth rooted in self-respect lasts longer than growth rooted in self-criticism. That shift alone is changing everything. The way you approach your work, the way you choose your relationships, the way you envision your future. You're no longer chasing versions of success that look impressive but feel empty. You're redefining what fulfillment actually means to you. And that definition doesn't always match what you were taught. There's also a sense of timing you're becoming attuned to. You know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to push and when to pause, when to hold on and when to let go. That discernment didn't come overnight. It came from making mistakes, from speaking too soon, from staying too long, from leaving too early. Every misstep taught you something you couldn't have learned any other way. You're realizing that not everything that ends is a failure. Some endings are completions. Some chapters end not because they were wrong, but because they did their job. You extracted the lesson. You gained the strength. You became someone new. Staying past that point would only dilute what you worked so hard to build. There's a quiet courage in you now, not the kind that rushes into danger, but the kind that stays steady under pressure, the kind that chooses truth over comfort even when it costs you, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. That courage shows up in small moments, choosing not to engage in drama, choosing not to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, choosing not to abandon your values for temporary relief. You're also more patient with others than you used to be, even as you maintain your boundaries. You understand that everyone is operating from their own level of awareness. You don't take everything personally anymore. You don't internalize other people's projections. You can see the difference between someone reacting from pain and someone acting from intention. That perspective protects you. It keeps you from hardening. It allows you to stay open without being naive. And that balance is rare. Most people swing between extremes. You're learning to walk the middle path. You've noticed how your definition of strength has evolved. It's no longer about pushing through at all costs. It's about knowing when to stop, when to reset, when to choose sustainability over burnout. You've learned that endurance without direction just leads to exhaustion. Now, you conserve your energy for what actually matters. There's a future version of you that already understands why this phase was necessary. A version of you that looks back and recognizes this as the turning point where everything suddenly shifted, not because of one dramatic decision, but because of a series of quiet ones. Choices no one applauded, boundaries no one celebrated, sacrifices no one saw. You're becoming comfortable with being underestimated. You no longer feel the need to correct every misconception about you. You've realized that being misunderstood is sometimes a form of protection. It keeps your plans private. It keeps your growth undisturbed. It allows you to move without interference. You're also learning that clarity doesn't always come before action. Sometimes it follows it. Sometimes you have to take the step before the path fully reveals itself. That used to terrify you. Now excites you in a grounded way. Not reckless excitement, but quiet anticipation. There are still moments where the old patterns try to pull you back, where familiar doubts resurface, where comfort whispers your name. But you don't judge yourself for those moments anymore. You observe them, you let them pass. You don't confuse a feeling with a directive. You've come too far to let temporary discomfort derail long-term alignment. You're also noticing how much lighter your life feels when you stop resisting what's already clear, when you stop trying to make people see what they're committed to ignoring, when you stop negotiating with situations that consistently cost you your peace. Acceptance isn't giving up, it's conserving energy. There's a depth to you now that attracts the right kind of connections, even if they arrive slowly. You're no longer impressed by intensity. You look for consistency. You look for people whose actions match their words, people who respect your boundaries without making you defend them, people who meet you with clarity instead of confusion. And until those connections fully form, you're okay being with yourself. You've learned how to enjoy your own company, how to sit with your thoughts without needing to escape them, how to create meaning in solitude instead of viewing it as a punishment. Solitude has been one of your greatest teachers. It stripped away illusions. It showed you who you are without an audience. It forced you to confront parts of yourself you once avoided. And instead of breaking you, it built you. You're no longer afraid of the quiet. In fact, you crave it, because that's where your intuition speaks the loudest. That's where your real desires surface. That's where you recalibrate. You've started asking better questions. Not how do I get there faster, but is this even where I want to go? Not how do I make this work, but should this be working at all? Those questions change the trajectory of a life. You're becoming intentional with what you consume, information, conversations, environments. You've realized that what you allow into your minds shapes how you experience reality, and you're no longer careless with that influence. There's also a deeper sense of gratitude forming, not the performative kind, but the grounded kind. Gratitude for the struggles that strengthened you, for the losses that redirected you, for the moments that forced you to grow up internally. You're starting to understand that your sensitivity is not a liability, it's a tool. It allows you to notice nuances others miss, to feel deeply without being ruled by emotion, to connect authentically without losing yourself. That balance is still something you're refining. You won't get it perfect every time, and you don't need to. Progress, not perfection, is the rhythm of your life now. You're no longer in a hurry to arrive. You're more interested in becoming someone who can hold what they once asked for, someone who doesn't self-sabotage when things get good, someone who doesn't abandon themselves when things get hard. This phase is asking you to stay present, to trust the process even when it feels slow, to honor your growth even when it's invisible to others, to keep choosing integrity when shortcuts tempt you. And as you continue moving through this space, you'll notice how the internal shifts start creating external ones. Subtle opportunities, unexpected conversations, doors opening in ways you couldn't have planned. Not because you forced them, but because you were finally aligned enough to walk through them. For now, you don't need to announce anything. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to rush to the next milestone. You just need to keep listening, keep refining, keep choosing what feels true over what feels familiar, because the version of you that's emerging doesn't need constant reassurance. It needs consistency, patience, and the courage to remain steady in moments where nothing seems to be happening on the surface, even as deeper foundations continue to form quietly beneath your awareness, shaping the way you'll move, lead, and live when the next chapter fully reveals itself. Chosen one, let this be the moment you stop looking outside yourself for permission, timing, or validation, because everything you've been searching for has been quietly forming within you this entire time. You were never lost. You were becoming. Every pause, every setback, every season of silence was shaping your discernment, your strength, and your ability to walk forward without needing the crowd to understand. From here on, move with intention, not urgency, with trust, not fear, with clarity, not noise. You don't need to rush what is already aligning, and you don't need to explain what your spirit already knows. Carry this awareness with you as you return to your life, your choices, your next steps, and remember that when you honor who you are becoming, the right paths will meet you where you stand, not because you chased them, but because you were finally ready to receive them.